my session is how to use GrantNav, and my name is Catherine Jordan, and I'm the Publisher and Support Manager at 360 Giving. That means that I'm responsible for the support we provide to funders to share their data. And today, I'm going to provide an introduction to GrantNav, which is 360 Giving's search engine for exploring open grants data. Firstly, I'm going to provide some context about 360 Giving and the data available to search in GrantNav. Then I'll provide a demo of some of the key features of the tool, and then we'll have time for questions. So please do add those in the Q&A section. So 360 Giving was founded in 2015 to support grant makers to publish their data using the 360 Giving data standard. We help people to access and use this data, and we've created tools to make it easy to explore, download, and visualize. We're still quite a small charity with 6 full-time members of staff, and a technical support team. So what is the 360 Giving data standard? Although many funders share information about their grants through reports, lists, databases, or maps on their websites, this data is in different formats, and it can take a lot of effort to find and get this data into a usable shape, which is why we developed a 360 Giving data standard to share basic information about their grant making in the same way. Because when different organizations make their data available in the same way, using the same headings and data formatting, it means the data can be combined and analyzed all together. It makes the data more usable and helps us to understand grant making across the UK and allows us to build tools like GrantNav. So all 360 Giving data has 10 core fields of information, and these cover the who, what, when, and how much of each grant. So these are the name and an identifier for the funder, and also for the recipient. That's the date of the award, the amount, and the currency of. It's also a unique identifier for each grant, and then also a title and description which describes the purpose of the grant. That means that every grant record you see in GrantNav has at least this information available. In addition to these 10 core fields, funders share a wide range of other information though. So they share information about the locations of the grant recipient and also where the funded work is being delivered, about grant programs and the grant duration, classifications if they have that information, website addresses, organization descriptions, and other kinds of information. If funders have decided to share any of this further information, it can also be explored in GrantNav. So as well as being standardized, 360 data is open data. This means that funders share their data under an open license, which lets users know they have permission to use the data. Releasing the information as open data, 360 Giving and others to build tools and form a community of people around using the data. This is a really fundamental feature of 360 Giving data, that the information is made available by each funder on their own website for anyone to use. This data isn't reported to 360 Giving. We're just one of the organizations that can and do use it. So in its rawest form, most 360 Giving data looks like this. It's a spreadsheet with rows of grants with all of the column headers and formatting required by the 360 Giving standard. It means anyone can access and download data in this way, and this is especially useful if you want to analyze the grant making of single funder. However, we know that not everyone enjoys digging around in spreadsheets, and so that's why we built tools like GrantNav to make it easier for everybody to use. So about GrantNav, so it's a search engine for 360 Giving grants data. It's free to use. There's no login to access the website, and there's the URL. You can go and access it right now. The data in GrantNav updates on a daily basis, which means that new data that is published will appear in GrantNav the next day. We first launched GrantNav in 2016, and it had data from 26 funders inside, and now it features grants from almost 200. We recently upgraded the tool with a new look and feel, and we've improved some of its search. But there are also more features to come soon, and I'll talk a bit about what these are like later. So I'm going to take you through in this demo and presentation through some examples of how you can use GrantNav. So you can explore the grants that are awarded by funder and also received by recipients. You can search text to find relevant grants. You can filter the data by funder type, location, date, grant size, and you can also download the results of your searches for further analysis. So as well as being a tool to let you look at data in it, you can also take away the data in spreadsheets. So now I'm going to move into Delph. So here's GrantNav. As you can see, this is the homepage, and we have a big search box to enter your search entries into. And then we have 3 links on the homepage to a funder summary, a recipient summary, and see all grants. And so if I go to the funder summary, this is a table of all of the funders that have shared information, and you can sort it alphabetically by grant size and search to look for a particular funder. If we go to the recipient view, it's the same. It's a table with all of the recipients. It can be searched alphabetically, sorted. You can look for who's had the most and the fewest grants there. And then if you move into the grant search view, you can see the search box again, but now it has filters to let you narrow down the search. So you can search all fields, locations, recipients, or just titles and descriptions. Then under here, you can see a summary box, and this shows all of the details of the grants that are currently in the search. So we haven't put in any search terms, so this is all of the grants in GrantNav at the moment. And as you make your searches and as you down the results, this summary search box will start to change. There's also a search sort function. Best match is the default, but it also can be searched, sorted by high-low grant value and latest and earliest grants. And then here you can see, we start to see the grants themselves. We have a summary of the grants, which show the title and description text, information about the funder, recipient, region, and district. And this has various results, which you can then scroll through different pages for. And then on the left-hand side, there are filters. So here you can filter by currency, by the amount awarded, by the award year, also by geography, which is broken into country and region and also local authority district, by funding organisation type, by the funding organisation itself, and then also by recipient. So that's just a quick whiz through the functions, and then back to my presentation. So the first walkthrough I'm going to give you is how to search to find a particular recipient. So we know that funders use GrantNav for due diligence to see who's funded an applicant or a grantee organisation, see what the grant, how much the grant was awarded, when, what for. We also know that GrantNav is used by charities for fundraising research to find out who has funded similar organisations or projects. So in 360 Giving data, each recipient is described with 2 pieces of information. It's got its name and it's also got its organisation identifier. So to search for recipients, you start by searching for the name, and this is done through the main search page. And you want to filter so it only searches for in the recipient name field. This makes sure you only get the relevant results, and you can also use quotation marks to be very specific. You can also search via the recipient summary view, which you access via the homepage. Here, is where you can start typing and a result will appear. And this is good for browsing or if you don't exactly know what you're looking for. So if we go back into GrantNav, into a search, so the first thing we're going to do is filter by recipients by clicking that button. So we know that we're just going to be searching for this inside that field. And then we're going to add the name of an organization. I'm going for Just for Kids Law. But I'm going to put it in quotation marks because I want to be really specific about this search so that I'm just finding those results. So if I click search, and then we can scroll down and see. So here you'll see the search results in this summary. And from 500, you can see that there are a total of 66 grants given by 24 funders to 4 recipients to an organisation matching the name Just for Kids Law. And so you can see here one from 2015, one from 2020. And so I'm going to sort it so that it's the latest first. So we can see what's the most recent grant awarded to this organisation. So if we want to, we can then have a look at the particular grant record, and any of these areas on the summary, if it's got an underline, it means it's a link to another view. And no, so there we go. Here's the grant record. These are the 10 required fields at the top. You can see the description saying that this funding is for a project to empower young care leavers in London to have their voices heard and campaign for change. It will focus on their right to safe and secure housing, which is frequently not realised for young care leavers, resulting in high levels of homelessness. And yeah, so that here you can see the information. If you click on this recipient organisation link, you can then see a view which is for Just for Kids Law. And here you can see there are 63 grants, 23 funders, and you can see this list of all the different organisations that have shared data and said that they funded Just for Kids Law. And then you can open up any of these arrows to see a little bit more about the data. And then if you click on the title, you can then look at the grant record. So this is a way to kind of navigate around organisations, recipient organisations, and find out relevant information. So if I go back to the main search, one of the things you might have noticed is it says there are 4 recipients. There's a number of reasons this might happen. It might happen because there are 2 similarly named organisations, and so there just needs to be a further refining of your search. But it's also possible that the same organisation has been identified in different ways. So this could mean if an organisation has a charity number and a company number, 2 different funders might have used those 2 different identifiers to identify the organisation. So you'll have one record for the charity number and one record for the company number. Another reason might be that there's a typo in the identifier. So essentially something's just gone a little bit wrong. And then the final reason might be because the funder hasn't included the charity or company number in the identifier, so they've used an internal one instead. So it means that it's always good to be aware of them being separate records for different organisations. And this is where you might do a search and then go down to the recipient filter, look at the options there, and then select when you feel happy with you've got the recipient organisations that are relevant to you and you're interested in, you select on those, and then you're just looking at that information and you can download it and take it away. Another way I mentioned that you can look at the data is via recipients view. So let me go back. So here, if you click on recipient summary, you go to the very long list. And this is where, if you start typing, you start to get results. So for instance, an organisation like Homestart, there are many different Homestarts around the country. And this will show you 525 different records. and you can scroll through all of these different ones. So, oh, I wanted to actually see Home Start Camden, so you can click on that, and then again, that opens up that view. You can see 18 grants, 9 funders, and you can start to see that list. So this is a good way to either browse for data if you're not sure it's there. If you're kind of interested in various things and you're not sure, it's a good way to get to it. And if you want to then look at a specialization record, it's a good way to find it. Yeah, so here's Home Start Westminster. However, if you want to export the data for further use, you do need to kind of go back and rerun the search via the main search page. So that's a quick introduction to searching by recipients. So to recap, with recipients, it's good to be aware that there could be multiple recipient records and the reason for it. These are caused by different identifier types. That means that even if you're searching by name, using text to search for the name, you might want to use the recipient filters once you've narrowed down your search and you know who to look for. And as well as searching for name, charity or company number of an organization, you can also search by that. And that can be a good way of making a very specific search. Sorry. Now we're going to move on to searching to look at location. So you can see where funders have given grants, which parts of the country, and you can also see which organisations are working in the location. So as the 360 Giving data has grown, there's now data about grants awarded all around the parts of the UK. And so it's becoming a valuable resource for anyone who's interested in knowing what funding is going to particular places. So for searching by location, as with recipients, you can filter to search only location fields. And as with recipients, you use quotation marks to make a search more specific. There are also location filters inside of the main search, and you can start by your country and then pick the available local authority districts. So if we go back to the beginning, so again, we're in the main search page, and now we want to select locations, so we know we're just looking for that. So I live in South London, so I'm going to look up for grants awarded in my area, and I'm going to use the quotation marks to make sure the search is really specific. So I've run that search, and now I can see there are 59 grants awarded by 5 funders that have gone to that area. And so again, I can look at the latest, bring that to the top. I can see Sport England's made some awards to a hockey project, and the Walcott Foundation has made grants to a local primary school. So when you're searching in location only mode, it's good to be aware to use official place names. The reason for that is because these filtering functions work with ONS, Office for National Statistics Geography. So it will recognise region names, local authority district names, and also ward names. But if you put place names that don't align with those, you may get slightly different results. So if you look at a particular grant record, you can see there's a region and also a district. And if we open the district view, what you get, like with the recipient, you get a list, and these are all the grants that are associated with Lambeth Borough by the geography. So there's almost 5,000 grants from 98 funders. And again, you get to see the funder, the title, and you can look at a little bit more detail. So this is a good way to focus in on a particular place if there's only one place that you're interested in. And it's also possible to export this data using the export grants data by CSV function on the right-hand side. So you can also search location by using the filters on the left-hand side of the main search page. So to do this, you want to start by opening up the geography and going to country and region. This is because there's 600 different districts around the UK, and so you need to narrow down to region first. So I'm going to pick Northwest. And then you can choose from the districts the relevant ones. So I want to pick Manchester district and also Liverpool district. Now I can see that there are almost 10,000 grants from 90 funders, which have the filters applied, Manchester district and Liverpool district. And again, for this, I can export the CSV with all of this data in it, or I can start to drill down in the details, look at the highest grant or the lowest grant, or the best match. So this allows you, these location functions allow you to search by the local authority districts. But if you're interested in something like a county, things can be a bit more challenging. So you might start, for instance, wanting to find grants that have gone to Surrey. If you run this search in all grant fields, you might get quite a few relevant matches. This has gone to Surrey Heritage, going to the Woking district, something that's gone to Surrey Wildlife Trust. But you'll also be finding examples that have gone to places that are outside of Surrey because it happens to use that name. And you also need to be aware that it might be missing examples of grants that have gone to the Surrey County area, but because the word Surrey isn't used in the data, you're not picking it up. So at the moment, if you wanted to be really sure of finding a search for Surrey, with all of the parts of Surrey, what you need to do is go into geography and district, to the relevant criteria. So with Surrey, there's 11 different districts, so it can be a little bit fiddly, but that's the way that you can guarantee you're looking at the right data. So a bit of a recap around searching by location. So those location filters and GrantNav's location functions work on UK geography only. As discussed, those filters work on region and districts, so other areas like counties will be more fiddly to find. You have to construct them from their constituent parts. Also, be aware that not all grants include location data. So location isn't one of the 10, and it does mean that only 66% of funders include recipient location in their data. So when you do location-based searches, you may be missing part of the picture. Another thing is that the location functions GrantNav do show where the recipient is based, but that could be different from where the project delivery is happening or the communities that are being served by the funding are. So it's also good to be aware of when recipient location may not give the full picture about where in a country the funding is going to. However, when I talked about the further upgrades, there will be more location functions coming soon, and it will be making the exploration by place a little bit easier. So now I'm moving on to talking about searching by keywords. So this method lets us explore the purpose of the funding a bit more, what the activities or things are being funded, what sectors or issues are being addressed, and which people or communities are being served. So this can be useful for both charities looking to identify a potential funder for their work, for funders looking to understand who else funds the same issues as them, and also for researchers looking to understand more broadly. As with recipients and locations, you can start by searching all fields, or you can start to filter by just title and description text only. So this is focusing on the core parts of the data which the funder uses to explain the purpose of their grant. Again, you use quotation marks to help make your search specific, also other operators that can help you get the relevant results you want. So a few general points about text search. By default, all of those searches were all fields, so it depends on how you use filters if you want to be more specific. Also, the text search isn't case sensitive, so you don't need to worry about that. And then another thing, GrantNav uses a technique called stemming. So this means that it finds different forms of the same word. So if you search for disability, it will also give you results for disability and disabled. If you search for the word garden, it will also give you the results for gardens, but also gardening. So it's sort of looking at related terms that are sort of grammatically related to what you're looking at. So a little about the operators. These are a further way to constrain your searches, and depending on which ones you use, you'll get very different results. So an AND search will give you narrower results than an OR search, and a NOT search will help you to distinguish between terms that are often related together. So move on to the demo again. Let's make sure I haven't got any search terms already in there. So the default search looks at all fields. So it's good to be aware when doing text searches of when that might help and when that might hinder. So for instance, if you were interested in reading and literacy projects, you might want to select titles and descriptions to avoid getting too many results for Reading in Berkshire. So you can just put in a list of the terms that you want. So if I put children, young people, and run that search on titles and descriptions, let's see how many that gives. So when we look at the results, there's over 150,000 results. So this is the widest possible search you could find. This means that basically all three words are being looked at, and when you start to scroll through the results, Best Match will show you the grants where all three words are present, but as you scroll through all of the different results, it will become decreasing relevance, and eventually many of the grants will just say the word people, which may not be what you want. So you can also use the quotation marks. So put that phrase together and you run the search. When you look at this, you've got 758 responses. So that's a huge contrast to the previous almost everything. So this will be the narrowest kind of research that you can do, because it's looking for that exact phrase. However, if you start to put in the operators, this is where you can start to kind of split the difference between very specific and less specific. So children, and I want to find the phrase young people with those two words together. So if you run this search, you now get almost 9,000 results. And what you're getting is all of the results where children and young people are present, necessarily have to be next to each other in a phrase. If you did want to actually be wider in scope with this, so you're interested in children or young people, so you're happy if you get either or, you can run an or search. So when you to 83,000, so it's a very wide research, but if that's what you want, that's the way to go. And if you were interested in looking for grants to children, you know that lots of projects work with children and young people, but actually that's not what you want. You just want children, maybe people younger and infants. You could use a not phrase, and then you're looking for just children, but at no point does it come with the text young people as well. So it's focused on those. Again, it's still quite a wide search because children is a popular funding topic, but there you get 41 1,000 results. So if we go back to a completely new search, so if I go with young and care leaver and housing, so there's 2 words and 1 phrase, and search for that, we're going to get all of the grants with the title and description where it has those terms. We've got 32 grants, and then if I search it for the latest first, in the top of these results, you can see that Trust for London grant that we looked at earlier. So this is the text that they had in their in the grant description, but then you can scroll and see, well, here are some other grants: Henry Smith, Comic Relief, which have the same words in it. So these 32 grants might have something in common that could be of interest. So a recap on searching with text. Text search can be really powerful, but it can take some experimentation to get to grips with how the functions work and also what you need. There is quite a variation in the amount and quality of text provided by funders. There will be examples where grants just have placeholder text instead of full descriptions, so it will be more difficult to get these grants to give you meaningful results. When you're doing these kind of searches, it's good to consider what terms people use and maybe do a bit of exploring with grants, find examples, and then use that language again. And so also think about whether you might need to use multiple search terms and also look in multiple fields to find what you need. Sometimes with a topic or a sector, there might be many keywords that would build together towards the picture that you want. It's good to be aware that if you have a wide search, then maybe results are actually unrelated to your query. So that means don't look at the summary results to see how many grants and how much money and take that as gospel. You'd want to do further analysis of the data to check it's all relevant. And even with sophisticated searches where you've kind of narrowed down things very well, you want to be prepared to download the data and do some cleaning to remove irrelevant results. So example, getting rid of your readings when all you want is reading. So for charities looking for funding, GrantNav can be a useful place to look, especially smaller organisations with limited budgets to pay for fundraising directories. So by combining different search methods, it is possible to find out what grants funders have awarded to organisations, places or projects, and this can provide useful information for further fundraising research. So in addition to searching by location and text, you can use date filters to show just the recent awards. So this would help to show what grant makers are currently funding and their priorities. All the filters work for calendar years, but it is possible to use date ranges to select other periods. There's also a new feature in GrantNav added this March, which allows you to include or exclude grants from the search results based on the type of funder. So it's divided into lottery distributors, general charitable grant makers, and then public sector funders, further broken down into central, devolved, or local council level. So depending on what your interest lies, you can make sure that you're focusing on those funders that you'd be thinking of applying to. And as I've mentioned throughout, as well as exploring those grants results in GrantNav, you can download all the data from your searches and the various views. So, take away the data for more detailed analysis. This can be really useful. So, for a final quick demo, back to GrantNav. So, learning, using everything that we've learned today, I'm going to do a search for mental health. Oh, not mental health. And I'm interested in young people mental health particularly, but I'm not interested in school projects. So mental health and young, but not school. And I run that search. So I've got 2,800 results there, but I want to just focus on the titles and descriptions. So it's about the purpose of the grant rather than any other data that might be there. And so that's reduced it a little bit. And then actually, I'm interested in just the grants that have been awarded by the lottery and grant making organisations, which are kind of general purpose charitable grant makers. So select those. And there now there's 2,100 different results. And also I'm interested in recent grants. So I'm going to select for 2021, 2022, and 2023. And the project I'm thinking about is based in the southwest of England. So I'm going to apply that criteria there. And then what you have is your search that's looking at a topic. You have your focus in terms of the type of funder. You have recent grants awarded in the last 3 years, and you've also got only those that have gone to the southwest. 2,000 or more grants is a list of 53 grants, 11 funders, and then you can start to look at what. And then this is the kind of amount of data that potentially can be taken away and used for further research. So that handful of grants, if those results seem relevant, that you might download, you might then run another few research, searches. So that's been a bit of an introduction to some of the ways that GrantNavs can be used, which hopefully give you what you need to get started. As I said, in the coming months, we'll be making further improvements, extending the range of location data used to mean that it will be possible to filter by where grants are delivered, as well as where the recipients are based. We'll be adding a search into the recipient and funder filters to make it easier to find and select the organisations you want. We'll also be adding in a date range filter, so it will be easier to look at the data by different periods rather than just calendar year. And as well as these further improvements, we'll be linking our GrantNav tool to another tool that we have called 360 Insights. So 360 Insights is another of our tools, and what it does is combines and visualizes grants data with charity data, and it creates a dashboard with results for the information. So this is a tool that currently works with published files of 360 giving data, and there's a link to that so you can try it if you want. But what we're going to be doing is connecting the two tools together. So it means that you will be able to load the results from a GrantNav search into the 360 Insights tool and visualize and explore the data there. So watch this space for further updates. So in terms of other useful resources, there's a help page on GrantNav, which gives some more detail about text searches and searching by ranges. We have blogs written about uses of the data. There's one recently, particularly about how to use GrantNav to do fundraising kind of prospect research. And also there's the GrantNav email address where if you've got queries about using the tool, feedback, you can email us. So now it's time for questions, if there are any. Cool. Okay. So Lynn. So Lynn Richardson asked, the sort by list, what does the best match mean? How is it judged? Yeah. So the best match functionality is very much like a Google search in the sense that it's sort of algorithmically judged. When you're doing a text search, it will be influenced by how many of the search terms you've included come up, but it also be influenced by things like how many grants a funder has awarded. So the kind of scale of the funder will also influence it. So it's giving you what it thinks you might be most interested in based on the volume of data in the tool. Yeah, so best match is good for when you're exploring the data, and but you need to be aware that if it's best match and you haven't used some of those operators to restrict, you may start to get examples of grants that actually aren't very relevant to your needs. And then yep, so Sam, so how many more UK funders are there than the 192 who already contributed data, and how do we encourage them to share the data with you? Yeah. So in the UK, there are thousands of funders. These range from very small to the very large. We have really good coverage of large national funders. We have 50% of all of the community foundations in the UK sharing data, and we have 15 local authorities sharing data, and data from all central government departments, and also some data from the Scottish Government. So there's a real mix. We cover things like, the National Lottery Community Fund, BBC Children Need, Comic Relief, Esme Fairbairn. So some of the really big funders, but yeah, there's always more growth, and our door is always open when if organisations are sharing their data. So yeah, if you'd like to see a particular funder's data and you know them, put them in touch with us. We're always keen to work with organisations large and small, and we have pro bono support for organisations to help them share their data. So all of our support services are free. Sharing open grants data is free, and we're here to help people. And there's a question from Louise Broadbent. Can you search for a funder by location? I find local funders as opposed to recipients. So yeah, there isn't an explicit function for that. With things like community foundations, they're usually their places in their name. So if you did a search by that, they would come up. So really the only way to know where funders are is to use those location fields. But that's a really good idea, and it's one of those pieces of information that potentially we could make clearer, how to find funders based on where they're active. I don't know if there are any other questions. I can go and give a bit of a demo of those things for the sort by and how you'd find funders by location, if that's helpful. Yeah, so if you were exploring the grants and then searched, and you're particularly interested in an organisation, if you filter by a region, Scotland, for instance, what you will start to get is the details of funding organisations that can or do have a focus there. So near the top, we've got Scottish Government. You've also got the Robertson Trust, which is a Scottish specific funder, Cora Foundation, Glasgow Council, Bord na Gaelic, which funds Gaelic services, Scottish Council for Voluntary R.S. MacDonald Trust. So this is quite a good indication of specifically Scottish focus funders, but it isn't quite the same as the filters being based on those locations. Right, so I've got another question come in. Does the database include NGOs with HQs in the UK but with projects abroad? Yeah, so the data itself includes any information that an organisation has decided to share. And so when it's a UK funder that funds both internationally and in the UK, those data, that grants will be in there. It is they won't show up in the location filters, but if you search by country names, their data will come up. If the headquarters of an NGO is in the UK, then it might turn up in the recipient location functions because their head office is in, Manchester. But then the details of the grant should tell you which country that's focused on. The kind of composition of 360 Giving data is quite skewed to UK funders with a UK funding focus. Part of the reason for that is that there is a sort of sister data standard to us called the International Aid Transparency Initiative. It's an open data standard for sharing data about aid funding and NGO activity. And so for kind of purely international funders, that can sometimes be a more suitable standard for sharing the data, because it allows you to talk about the projects in more detail than 360 Giving does. But yeah, but if I was to do a search, get rid of the Scotland, and I was search for like you would start to see results. Yeah, so various organizations, some of whom might be based in Kenya and some of whom might be based overseas. And one way to see if an organization is based overseas, it won't have the region and district information available, because essentially GrantNav isn't working with non-UK geography. So essentially your clue to either the data being missing or for the for it being abroad is it not having those elements there. Yeah, and so you can kind of see the recipient organizations and browse, and see which ones might be actually in Kenya itself versus being organizations that are based in the UK but work in Kenya. Questions? I think we've only got a few more minutes to go. Yeah, so I mean, I think it's free to use, it's available. So please do go and use it, see what you can find, and let us know how it's useful for you. We're always interested to get feedback and understand what your use case is for using it. Are you a researcher and you're interested in sector information? Are you a charity and you're looking to find people who fund you? Are you a grant making organization looking to see what your peers are up to? We're always really value hearing what people are using it for. Well, thank you everyone for attending, and yeah, get in touch with us and let us know what you think.